Good evening and thank you for joining us on India Business Hour. I'm Parikshit Luthra and here are the headlines we are tracking at this hour. The Finance Ministry tells a parliamentary panel that the timeline for becoming a $5 trillion economy has been postponed by 2 years to 2027 due to the pandemic. Adds that real GDP growth is expected to hover around 6.5 to 7% mark this fiscal, and inflation would enter the 2 to 6% tolerance band by the fourth quarter.
We took that view that the time has come now that we need to remove this export duty.
The industry gives a thumbs up to the government's decision to scrap export duty on iron ore and several steel products. Minister Jyotiraditya Scindia says that removal of export duty will lead to a new era of growth for the steel industry. The union government could reassess the national monetization pipeline goal, make it more realistic. Sources say government may reassess the accruals, may refocus on monetizing idle assets instead of running ones. The preparations for the union budget have begun. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman starts pre-budget consultations with industry chambers and experts on infrastructure and climate change. In a surprise announcement, Bob Iger returns as the CEO of Disney 11 months after leaving the company. Bob Chapek exits Disney after a tumultuous period at the helm. Iger will help the company's board find a new successor. Mixed reactions to the COP27 climate summit as the world's biggest economies make fresh commitments to cut greenhouse gas emissions. Developed nations agree to compensate poorer nations suffering due to climate change, but many world leaders call this a small step towards climate justice. Former bureaucrat Arun Goyal takes charge as election commissioner, fills the third and final post that had been lying vacant for 6 months. Goyal is next in line to succeed CEC Rajiv Kumar when he demits office in 2025. Government moves to regulate online consumer reviews after a slew of complaints from angry customers. Consumer Affairs Secretary says new standards will be imposed to safeguard customers from deceptive reviews. Earthquake strikes Indonesia's densely populated Java island. 56 people killed, over 700 injured. Officials say the death toll could go up. Hospitals overwhelmed with patients. Former US President Donald Trump snubs Twitter after Elon Musk announces the reactivation of his account. More than 15 million Twitter users voted in a poll conducted by Elon Musk, where nearly 52% favored the return of Trump. Straight to the day's market action. Dalal Street saw red for the third straight session amid growth concerns. Nifty and Sensex fall close to 1%, with the Nifty ending below the 18,200 mark. Broader markets fared better but ended mildly lower. A CNBC-TV18 news break confirmed the government has withdrawn export duties on most steel and iron ore products that were levied in May this year. The Steel Ministry says the rollback decision was taken on the back of a steep fall in steel exports in October. 15% duty on export of steel products and stainless steel has been scrapped. 45% duty on iron ore pellets has been scrapped. Duty on export of low-grade iron ore lumps have been scrapped as well. However, high-grade iron ore lumps will attract a duty of 30%. Steel Minister Jyotiraditya Scindia told Shireen Bhan that the time was right to remove export duty.
Multiple pressures on the steel industry with regard to pricing. And so we were dynamically monitoring that. And I had committed to the steel industry that we will take a view one way or the other in the month of November. And in the month of November, through our multiple deliberations with the Coal and Mines Ministry, with the Home Ministry, with the Commerce and Industry Ministry, and finally with the Finance Ministry, we took that view that the time has come now that we need to remove this export duty. If anything has kept the steel sector going as far as India is concerned, with a capacity of almost 150 million tons per annum and a production of almost 121 million tons per annum, it's actually the domestic demand.
The industry has given a thumbs up to the government's decision to scrap export duty on steel and iron ore. Danish Anand gets us the feedback from the steel industry.
As the economy is bouncing back from the pain imposed by COVID, the government last week gave a major relief to the steel sector by removing export duty on certain items. Well, this had been a long-standing demand of the industry, and the government feels that this will lead to a new era for India's steel sector. Well, this is what the major industrialists from the steel sector had to say.
I think it's one of those industries which is really, as Mr. Sajan Jindal said, an industry which can make in India for the world. It can be a great example of Atmanirbharta as well as a great example of a globally competitive industry which creates jobs and economic opportunities in some of the poorest parts of the country.
We expect this demand and requirement to continue, but is there any concerns for the future? Yes, it's absolute yes. We have to be vigilant about the changing expectations from the steel industry as the country marches forward in the infrastructural growth.
Winter time generally for European countries, US countries, export market, if I can say, is generally at a slowdown pace because they're looking at destocking mode. But we feel after January onwards again, the export market should pick up.
I would say over the last 6 months, demand in steel in India has held up actually the steel industry while exports was not there. The international demand has been impacted. One, because of the pandemic, followed by the war, and the high energy cost as a consequence of the pandemic and the war is resulting into some de-acceleration in the demand in many parts of the world. But we expect that to be sorted out probably as we go along to the next year.
While the industry is happy with the latest government announcement, but still there are many challenges in the future as currently the international demand is low and it is majorly the domestic demand which is keeping the steel industry running. The industry expects certain announcements from the government in the upcoming union budget, and the industry feels that there should be some announcement on anti-dumping of stainless steel, there should be some announcement on demand generation, and they are seeking a clarity on green steel, decarbonization, and how the government will help the industry in energy transition. With video journalist Rajinder Singh Raina, this is Danish Anand for CNBC-TV18.
And we'll keep looking out for the steel industry's recommendations ahead of the budget. Now focusing on the roadmap for a $5 trillion economy. The IMF recently lowered its global growth forecast for next year to 2.7%. Based on key economic indicators, the IMF has said the outlook for G20 economies is a gloomy one. High inflation, weakening of the Chinese economy, and the Ukraine-Russia war are weighing down the world economy. Now, amid global headwinds, the Parliamentary Committee on Finance today sought views from the Finance Ministry and Niti Aayog on the roadmap to a $5 trillion economy. So what did the government tell the parliamentary panel? Well, sources tell us that the government has said the real GDP growth is expected to be between 6.5% to 7% in FY23, inflation to enter the tolerance band of 2 to 6% by Q4 of FY23. Urban unemployment rate, which is at 7.6%, to fall further by the end of fiscal, and private capex cycle could commence in FY24. Among the headwinds to India's growth path, pressure on currencies to depreciate against the dollar will persist into 2023. Loss of world output and trade could impact India's growth. Continued high crude prices will dilute domestic stimulus to growth, and food inflation could worsen due to climatic conditions. Now, the timeline for India becoming a $5 trillion economy has to be postponed because India lost 2 years of growth. The $5 trillion target can be achieved by 26-27. For this, 6.5% annual growth rate would be needed, and inflation should be below 6%, and US inflation closer to 3%. Key reforms that would be needed to cross the $5 trillion target by 26-27. On the agriculture side, land consolidation, facilitating crop diversification away from food grains into edible oils. On the power side, increasing user charges, improving DISCOM viability and reliability of affordable power for MSMEs. Improved capacity of state governments to undertake local infra spending, reduced compliance burden on MSME from state, local and union government, focus on asset monetization and privatization, reduction of government debt stock and lower cost of capital as well. Moving on, the union government could reassess the national monetization pipeline goal, make it more realistic. Sources say government may reassess the accruals, may refocus on monetizing idle assets instead of running ones. Sapna Das joins us with the latest.
That's right. What we're getting to pick up is the fact that some kind of rejig within the national monetization pipeline is very much likely. This pipeline is worth around 6 lakh odd crores. That has been the government's aim. It was launched way back in September 2021. But some of the excitement emanating from this pipeline and the monetization of assets, that seems to have kind of, withered away, so to speak. So we're given to understand that a rejig is on the cards. Trying to make the pipeline and its goals more more realistic. Probably within that, I think the government, rather the centre, will also look at it in terms of how much will be accruing to them, because once you have a monetization pipeline, it's a three-way sharing of resources between the state governments, the companies, of course, which are doing the monetization, and some bit of it comes to the centre. So all of that is going to be part of this realignment that we are talking about. Of course, in terms of the 6 lakh crore number, that looks a bit fancy and a bit difficult to meet. But at the moment, at least, the centre will be sticking to that. Also, in terms of the laggards, well, railways were supposed to be the second largest contributor to the national monetization pipeline. It has not really met that goal, so to speak. Of course, it's roads that has been the largest contributor. Surprisingly enough, coal has also come up fast, but here lies in the problem. Basically, the monetization pipeline was meant to, invigorate life into those assets which have been lying idle, and not to kind of just talk about assets which are already running, and that's what is happening. So probably all the dead weight will be shaken off at some point in time. Maybe we can see some announcements coming up in the budget, so to speak. Last year, we do know that the monetization aim was met. It was somewhere around 88,000 crores. I think the government exceeded that. This year, the aim is around 1.62 lakh crore. We are given to understand anywhere between 1.25 to 1.50 lakh crore would be coming in. But again, the question remains, how much of that will come to the centre? So all of this is going to form part of the larger realignment that we are talking about, and some announcements likely in the budget.
All right. Thanks very much, Sapna Das, for reporting on the national monetization pipeline and the thinking within the government right now. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman has begun her pre-budget consultations. She chaired the first such meeting to date virtually with industry leaders and experts from the infrastructure, climate change space. The Finance Minister will be meeting representatives from agriculture, financial, social, education and other sectors over the next week. The Confederation of Indian Industry has put forth its suggestions ahead of the upcoming budget. They have requested the government to withdraw the levy on windfall gains on domestic oil production. The CII has also said that the government should rationalize income tax slabs and rates for individuals at the lower end and expedite rural infrastructure projects.
We have recommended that as far as the urban lower income consumer is concerned, we suggest rationalizing personal income tax slabs and rates at this lower end so that we can give them that much needed support, keeping in mind inflation as well, and increase their disposable income. In the same way, as far as rural India is concerned, we have suggested that as the government continues to focus on its capex investment, we would like to see a significant share of that going into rural capex so that there is rural job creation, which eventually will lead to rural consumption.
And Sanjeev Mehta, the MD and CEO of Hindustan Unilever, meanwhile, believes that softening of commodity prices could trigger a revival in demand. Listen in.
There has to be a trigger, and one of the trigger will be when the commodity prices start softening.
Correct.
And when they start softening, I see no reason why the volumes won't come back. So I think one of the trigger will be if the Ukraine crisis gets sorted, then we should definitely see a softening of commodity prices.
And the government has released guidelines to curb fake reviews on websites. These guidelines, which have been developed by the Bureau of Indian Standards, will come into effect from 25th of November. Timsi Jaipuria gets us more.
In a bid to safeguard and protect consumers from fake and deceptive reviews which are influencing their purchases that they are making via e-commerce sites and other platforms, Consumer Affairs Ministry along with BIS has formed guidelines, online consumer reviews, listing out principles and requirements for collection, moderation and publication of reviews which are kicking in from 25th of November. after noting a slew of complaints and understanding that consumers get fleeced by fake and paid reviews, especially in sectors such as travel and tourism, restaurants, hotels and eateries, and consumer durables. India will be the first global major who has taken the leap to have such standards even before Europe and America, which are still drafting such norms. Let's listen in to Consumer Affairs Secretary Rohit Kumar Singh about what and how these standards will be working.
We will see how it evolves, how it rolls out. If the self-regulation works and if the industry complies on their own, then there's no need of making it mandatory. But if we see a lot of non-compliance, a lot of complaints, then we'll have to go to the appropriate authority to explore whether it could be made mandatory.
Quick look now at some other headlines. Former bureaucrat Arun Goyal takes charge as election commissioner. With this appointment, the post left vacant by Sushil Chandra in May has been filled. He will be working alongside CEC Rajiv Kumar and Anup Chandra Pandey in the three-member commission. Goyal is next in line to succeed CEC Rajiv Kumar when he demits office in 2025. It is the end of an era at age-old soft drink maker Rasna. The founder, Ariz Firod Shah Khambata, popularly known as the Rasna Man, has died at the age of 85. He died after suffering a cardiac arrest on Saturday. The iconic homegrown beverage that converts a 5 rupee packet into 32 glasses is sold across 60 countries. During his career, Khambata won a plethora of awards, including President of India's Home Guard, and also was honored with the National Citizens Award for outstanding contribution in the field of commerce. Sources tell CNBC-TV18 that the Kirat Parekh panel, which is reviewing the gas pricing mechanism, is likely to submit its report to the government this week. Remember, the panel was supposed to finalize its report on 31st of October, but had sought more time. The panel was told to suggest a fair price of natural gas to the end consumer. The panel, which includes representatives from gas producers and distributors, has been doing a tightrope between the expectations of producers and consumers. The Supreme Court bench, led by CJI Chandrachud, termed the Morbi bridge collapse as an enormous tragedy. The bench ordered the Gujarat High Court to periodically monitor the probe and hear pleas that are seeking independent CBI probe and dignified compensation for the victims. In a surprise announcement, Bob, and time for a short break, but coming up, we get you a wrap of the Football World Cup underway in Qatar. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're watching India Business Hour. The climate summit in Egypt's Sharm el-Sheikh, COP27, closes with over 190 countries reaching a final agreement. A significant development from this year's conference has been the agreement to set up a loss and damage fund for developing countries impacted morbidly by the climate crisis. While this is a first, the nearly 2-week-long conference has little progress to display in terms of addressing many pressing issues. Moving on, an earthquake of 5.6 magnitude jolted the main Indonesian island of Java, which left at least 56 people dead and more than 700 injured. Officials fear the death toll could go up as many people are still trapped under the debris of damaged buildings. Even hospitals are overwhelmed with the rising number of patients. China's Beijing has tightened its COVID-related curbs after the death of 3 individuals in the age group of 87 to 91. This is the first time a COVID-related death has been reported in mainland China since May. Despite the stringent zero-COVID policy, which is relaxed by the government, recently, cases in the capital have reached about 2,000. CNBC's Eunice Yoon joins us now with the latest from Beijing. All right, we will be tracking the COVID situation in China. Remember, weakening of economic growth in China is a concern for many economies around the world. Now, former US President Donald Trump has snubbed Twitter after Elon Musk reinstates his account, says he sees no reason to return to social media platform. Earlier, Elon Musk conducted a Twitter poll where more than half of the 15 million respondents voted in favor of Trump's return. And before we wrap, the Football World Cup is underway in Qatar. Divya Mulani and Arundhati Ramnan get you all the action.
World Cup dream turned into an absolute nightmare soon after kickoff. Their team looked frazzled and overawed by the occasion, but they still have 2 more matches to prove their mettle. Now, the World Cup, like I said, was finally underway, and there were a few more controversies to add to the long list of controversies we've seen since 2010, when Qatar was awarded the World Cup.
Today I feel Qatari, Arab, African, gay, disabled, migrant worker.
Now, in a bizarre speech, the FIFA president, Gianni Infantino, berated all the critics of Qatar with a spectacular list of whataboutery. Why does he get to lecture everyone? Because he had red hair and faced bullying in childhood.
As a child, at school, I was bullied because I had red hair.
But Qatar has come under fire over its treatment of women, migrant workers, and the LGBT community, and Infantino's defense was received widespread criticism. In a statement, the Amnesty International said demands for equality, dignity, and compensation cannot be treated as some sort of culture war. They are universal human rights that FIFA has committed to respect in its own statutes. Now, apart from Infantino, another man was in the news for the wrong reasons. It was legendary actor Morgan Freeman. The man who played Nelson Mandela on screen appeared in the opening ceremony, speaking about how football unites the world, much to the dismay of his fans. But after all the controversies, the whistle blew at 9:30 p.m. India time. Qatar up against Ecuador, and there was controversy within the first 200 seconds. Ecuador scored, but the goal was disallowed. Social media blew up in anger, but it was actually not a goal, and the decision ended up being the right one. Now, in the stands, an Ecuador fan was still in shock and started to take pot shots at the local Qataris around him.
Relax, relax, relax.
But unlike Qatar's opening match, this story had a happy ending.
This is Peter. He is an Ecuadorian, and he is here to watch the match today.
Passion makes sometimes people upset.
Yes.
But we come together for sport. Sport brings people together.
So football does bring people together. Thank you so much for watching. We will be back with more news from the World Cup through the next few days. In Mumbai with Divya Mulani, I am Arundhati Raman.
With that, it's a wrap on this edition of India Business Hour. Thank you for watching. News continues right here on CNBC TV 18.